Hey superhero, how's it going? This is Enhancing the Human Experience, and this is episode 83. And I really am stoked that you're here listening to this episode. If you've been listening to podcasts for about, a few months, I've been talking about this new module that will be included with Just Be It, the secret to having what you want in life, through a link in that book, either the Kindle version or the PDF version. I've been talking about this new module that I've been absolutely thrilled about. And this past weekend, I recorded the video that will accompany the PDF. The PDF is looking like it's going to play out and come out at about 2 pages, 1.5, 2 pages, might even be 3. All the other PDFs that accompany that book are 1 page. But I've been talking about how thrilled I am with this new module and giving you some little glimpses of what it is. But this past weekend I recorded it and I'm super thrilled to introduce it. Now, a couple things, if you've already purchased Just Be It, the book, either Kindle or PDF, and you have that link, you will eventually have access to the new video and the new PDF. So that will be included in there. And that's one of the great things about, the modern world we live in is, and that's how I created it, is I wanted to create a folder, a downloadable folder where you can have access to any of the new things that I come up with, the new course things, the new tools that help you use this notion that what you are comes to you, and you attract things that are like how you see yourself, and your self-concept and your self-image will be mirrored and is mirrored already in your physical experience and in your circumstances. So you have access to any new tools and techniques and ideas that I come up with and add into that course material, that book. So I'm really, really excited about that, which led me to develop this podcast and talk about the fact that being is your superpower. And I talk about in the video that will accompany the PDF, but it really is true. The thing about it is human beings are the only creatures on earth that have self-awareness, don't we? And we're conscious of what we are. We have like 2 voices inside of ourselves, don't we? And because of that, because we're conscious of ourselves, we can make conscious choices about who we want to be. And what is that called? It's called alignment, isn't it? This is what all manifestation gurus and all metaphysicians and spiritual gurus talk about: alignment. It's all about the alignment. We live in a universe where everything is energy. Not only is it energy, but it's intelligent energy, isn't it? It's intelligent energy that responds to our own vibrations. And when we become a different person, we have a different experience in the world and in the universe. Let's just go big, because it is big. We have a different experience in the universe. That's why I'm so passionate about this message, that when you develop your state of being and when you change what you are at the level of consciousness, at the level of your self-concept and your self-image, everything will change for you. I talk about in the book a couple of examples, and really the best example is the example that you have after you've tried it, because you can read all about it. You can hear another person's example. You can hear their story, but it really doesn't matter. It doesn't make any difference until you've tried it yourself. And when I tried it, and when I did this, when I made the decision to consciously be a different way, talking about qualities, characteristics, and attributes, to consciously be a different way and embody different characteristics, I performed better. I had better results. I pushed through limitations that would have held me back, or pre-existing kind of states of being that were holding me back from having a better result and getting better outcomes and performing better. Because at the end of the day, that's all it is about. We either limit ourselves or we help ourselves expand, don't we? All about how we think, how we see ourselves and how we think. The problem is, and the real bugger of this whole situation is this: most of us are not conscious of those limits. See, if you were conscious of those limits, you wouldn't do it. If I was conscious, I wouldn't do it. Because that programming has been put in on such a low level, well, like a low, deep consciousness, it stays there dormant and it holds us back. It's like an invisible barrier, keeping our performance, our expectations, and ultimately our results at a certain level, right? We do the same things every day in the same way, and we achieve the same results until we break through that barrier of being in our mind, that self-concept of, I am a high achiever, I am a winner, I am a successful person. Until we break through that barrier, our actions never change, and then obviously our results never change. It's really, it's kind of fascinating when you think about it, because look at it this way. The other way to look at it is that you've been being the same way you're being right now for so long that you're on autopilot. Most of us are on autopilot. And when we go on autopilot, our brain starts to do things for us, and our self-image starts to do things for us. And that's a real problem, because then there's no growth, then there's no expansion, and there's no improved expectation, and ultimately no improved circumstances. And the nature of life is growth and expansion. And if you've ever had this experience where you've looked back on a portion of your life and realized, hey, I wasn't growing during these years or during these months because I wasn't challenging myself, I wasn't pushing myself. And I'm not talking about pushing yourself using willpower, because that's one way to do it, but it's much more effective to push yourself using the power of being. And that's why I talk about discovering the power of being, and that being is your superpower. Because when you change what you are, everything else is going to be a lot easier and more effortless. I'm not saying it's going to be completely effortless, but it's going to be more effortless, because you're changing your core concept, your core self-concept. And when you change that, every action will be much more fluid and much more flowing. It will flow much easier. This is the same thing that self-image psychologists, and especially Maxwell Maltz, talked about in his book, Psycho-Cybernetics, and all of his other works, is that when you change that core self-concept, core self-image, everything else changes a lot easier. And that's why human beings are superheroes. You're a superhero because you have the power to change what you are. Now, I'm going to go through some of the ways to do that, and I want to share some of the ideas that you will discover in the book and also in these extra tools. Incidentally, I'm calling this new module and the new tool that you'll be creating when you watch the module and download the PDF, the Being Board 2.0. Now, for those of you who purchased the book, you already have watched the module for how to make a being board, which is, in my opinion, the most powerful tool for helping you create your life. It's even more powerful than a vision board. Now let's look into why that is. A vision board represents the things and experiences you want to have in your life, right? Maybe more money, better relationships, you want to take a vacation, have more success at work, right? The vision board represents the things you want to have. What's the cause of that? What's the cause of the things you want to have? Well, you're the cause, right? What you are comes to you, and you will act and have things that are in accordance and alignment with how you see yourself. You're never going to have something, you're never going to be able to do something unless you see yourself as being that person and see yourself as being the cause of having that thing. There's no randomness in the universe. There's no accidents, nothing happens by happenstance, and that's really fortunate. Because when you change, everything changes for you. This is what every success guru talks about, every single one of them. My favorite being Jim Rohn's famous quote that success is something you attract by the person you become. Now, Jim Rohn was a mainstream success, motivational, inspirational speaker. But you know what? That quote, success is something you attract by the person you become, is straight up spiritual, metaphysical quote. It could have been written by Florence Scovel Shinn, could have been written by Louise Hay, Wayne Dyer, Neville Goddard, any one of those folks. Because they all say the same things. And this is when you know you're really onto something. When you have found a vein of knowledge that is the same in every tradition, whether it's spiritual, intellectual, motivational, metaphysical, any of those veins. When you tap that vein and it's all the same, you know you've got it. Because it's not just one person in one industry trying to explain something or telling you something. It's everyone in every industry across the board telling you that, hey, it's all about what you are. If you want to have the easiest, shortest distance to having the life that you want, change what you are. Change one thing. That's why I wrote the book about it. That's why I'm so passionate about this, because in all of the tools that I create and all of the things that I do, which is backed by an incredible amount of passionate self-study about these topics, because I am literally in love with this topic of enhancing the human experience. The reason that I create the tools that I do is because they're the simplest lever to pull. It's the simplest button to push. It's not 20 steps or 5 steps or even 3 steps. It's one step. I often say that in the game of life, there's only one variable, and that variable is you. There's just one variable. Doesn't that make you feel good? You can get rid of every other thing, every other lists, the 20 things you need to do, the 10 things you need to do, all those other lists can go away and you change one thing and you win. One lever, one button, one variable, and you win. So that's why I created these really simple tools to help you do that, put this into practice. Because as we all know, it's not just reading the knowledge and knowing it, you got to apply it. Now, you've probably heard this saying before a bunch of times, and I'm going to say it again. It's simple, but it's not easy. It's a simple lever to push, and it's a simple button to push, but consciously, it's hard, right? Because you're deeply ingrained, your state of being is deeply ingrained, and your patterns of behavior are deeply ingrained as well. And while it may be simple to push that lever or pull that lever and push that button, it's not easy because of your history of being a certain way. And that's why it's all about the baby steps, right? Just take baby steps in your mind to remind yourself, I am this, this is who I am, this is how I am, and continually do that on a consistent basis. And eventually, of course, you arrive at the place in your consciousness when you really are that person. And then, of course, everything flows, all of your actions flow there. So that's the why, right? I'm big on why do you want to do it? Why is it necessary to do this? What do you have to do and how do you do it? We already know the why. When you change, everything changes for you. Everyone knows this. That's a pretty well given. Let's talk about how to do it, what to do. There's a couple things I want to share with you, and this idea has been rattling around in my mind, and I want to share with you because it's very helpful to me to think of it this way. And it is this. All of us come into the world with a tabula rasa, a clean slate, right? You are then programmed and conditioned by your environment to be a certain way. And this is when those subconscious limitations start coming in, right? Because remember, we cannot escape the fact that we are both the cause and the effect of our environment. We just can't escape that, right? We're a product of our environment, and our environment is a product of us. It's intertwined. Everything is kind of in there together. But the thing of it is this. Your environment doesn't create you. You create you. Your environment does not create you. You create you. And that's why you can change and get out of it. This is why people that are born in very, very adverse situations, poverty and sickness and lots of things stacked against them, very heavily stacked against them, go on to become highly successful people in their field, very wealthy, prosperous, and abundant. That's why that happens. If we didn't have the ability to create ourselves from the inside out using our imagination and holding in our consciousness the person we want to be and we need to be, that is in alignment with the experiences and things we want to have, nothing would ever change for anyone. Because if you're born into poverty in an environment that is surrounded by lack and scarcity, you're going to stay there because your environment has then created you and you never have any choice in the matter. You never are able to get out of it. Luckily, that's not the case. We can make a conscious choice and we can decide, which is one of the key factors that makes you a superhero. You can decide right today who you want to be, what you want to do, and what you want to have. And once you decide and make up your mind there, Emerson's famous quote, when you decide, the whole universe conspires to make it happen. It's all about that decision. Other creatures don't have the ability to decide. They're bound by either instinct or just the innateness of themselves. They don't have self-awareness. You have self-awareness. And that's your superpower. Being able to decide who you want to be is your superpower. And most of us, myself included, at various times have squandered that, quite frankly. Right? This is why people die, and at the end of their life, they're wishing they had pushed more. They wished they had become more. Life is all about growth and expansion. And this is why the famous quotes come around, don't die with your music still inside of you, follow your bliss, express your dream, do all those things. That's why those are around, because at the end of your life, it's done and you go to wherever you go, right? Your body stays here, your intellect stays here, and your mind stays here. You go. Don't wait till that point in time to push into that barrier. Don't wait till that long and to exercise your superpower and turn on your superpower. Of course, when you turn it on, if it's been dormant for a while, it's going to be rusty, isn't it? That machinery hasn't moved. It's going to take time. Remember back when you were a baby walking, learning how to walk, treat yourself like you did then. Don't pay too much attention to the trip ups, the fall downs, the skin knees, the failing. Don't pay too much attention to that. Just fail your way towards success and allow yourself to learn, because most of us have let this superpower lie dormant. We really have. We don't talk about it in mainstream. We don't talk about it in public education. That's one of the reasons why I feel fortunate to talk about it. And this is what it's all about. Your state of being will create your state of activity and your state of having the things and experiences you have. Another way I like to look at it is that everything you do in life and everything you have in life flows from your conditioned state of being. You condition your state of being to be really high, really successful and prosperous and abundant. Your actions will follow that, and so will your experiences. But it all comes from within, and thank God that it does, and we're not just products of our environment. So that's the main idea that I wanted to share with you about the fact that you're a clean slate. Always remember that you're a clean slate. Even if you're 60 years old and you've had 60 years of conditioning to your state of being, you're still a clean slate. Just remember it. Changing your beliefs will allow you to change your actions and will ultimately change your experiences. Because sometimes people think, well, I am the way I am. Well, the question is, are you really the way you are? And how are you? Right? The guy next door down the street may be 20 times more successful in pushing into his own or her own level of experience. Why can't you do that? Why can't anyone do that? You're not the way you are. You're the way you've allowed yourself to be. We all are, right? We've all allowed ourselves to be conditioned by the story we tell ourselves over and over again. And guess what that becomes? That becomes your belief. That becomes the paradigm that you operate your life from. We all are in that situation. My challenge to you, and this is the challenge that I give myself every day as well, is, hey, remember you're a clean slate and you can start today and be an entirely different person. And every day you tell yourself that, clean slate, clean slate, clean slate. You're not bound by your past state of being, by your past self-concept. You can be yourself into any experience that you want. We all can. And that is the power that you have because you're a superhuman. You're a superhero because you can be something. You can be whatever you want. Really powerful concept, and I think about it quite a bit. All because we have an imagination, right? Our imagination can take us wherever we want. It can create whatever we want inside of ourselves, and then we can actually do those things. So keep that in mind. I think it's really powerful, really, really powerful that being is your superpower. And that's what I wanted to share on today's episode of the podcast, Enhancing the Human Experience. A couple things before we wrap up. You can always listen to these episodes on any of your major or favorite podcast apps, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and I think there's TuneIn and a couple more. It's really everywhere. Eventually probably get it onto iHeartRadio, but right now you can listen to everywhere. And my favorite place is YouTube. You can catch all these episodes. They usually go up anywhere from a week to 2 or 3 weeks after the original airing, but that is youtube.com/gmarkphillips. And you can also check out vlog posts and other ideas that I share about enhancing the human experience, using these metaphysical and spiritual powers that we all have access to improve your business and your life. Because there's no distinction, right? It all comes under the umbrella of the fact that you are a spiritual being having a human experience. Pierre Desjardins, that's the quote that I try to design and live my life around, and I encourage you to do the same. And why is that? Only because you then have access to infinite spiritual power. If you don't have access to the spiritual power that always is flowing through you, then of course that's another limitation. You're going to limit that because here's the secret. You always have access to it. The question is, are you going to use it or not? And if you don't use it, you're not going to have better and better experiences. So think of yourself as a spiritual being. Think of yourself as always connected to the source that every spiritual being, every physical thing comes from. Incredible idea. The other thing is, business and life is not different, right? Tony Robbins said business is a spiritual game. Life is a spiritual game. We're spiritual creatures having a human experience. So when we think of ourselves as that, we have access to that spiritual creative power. Some call it the God force. Some call it your soul or your spirit, divine intelligence. You have access to that power that flows through you. This is another really powerful concept I talk about a lot, and I'm going to share it again briefly here. You're not doing it. You are not doing anything. You're not doing the creating. I'm not doing the creating. I find this to be, again, a very powerful concept to start to think about. Because a lot of times people say, well, I can't do that. I'm not that good. I'm not that way. I'm not that bold. I'm not that brave. I can't do it. Well, I got news for you. You're not doing anything. None of us are doing anything. The reason is you're not pumping your own blood. You're not beating your own heart. You're not regulating your own body temperature. You're not doing any of the myriad of things that is going on right now in this very moment to keep you alive. You're not doing it. I'm not doing it. Keep me alive. There's a force within us that is doing it. And it is that's an understatement. It is way more advanced and it is way more capable than anything we can ever fathom, right? That's the God force. That source energy flowing through you. That's doing everything. That idea alone has opened up incredible amounts of realization in my own life. And I think it'll do the same. I know it'll do the same for you as well. You're not doing anything. You're not doing anything. Allow it to be done. Allow that force to flow into the experiences that you want to have, the things that you want to do, and the person you want to become, and everything will start changing very rapidly. So another really, really powerful concept that I think about in my own life, and I feel compelled to share that with you because really, what are you doing, right? So again, you can find them on YouTube, youtube.com/gmarkphillips. And last but not least, if you got some value out of this episode of the podcast, or you've listened before and said, hey, that kind of helps me see it a little bit differently, helps me out here or there. If you got some value, it would be super awesome if you would leave a review on iTunes about the podcast, sharing your feedback, sharing your experience. I would really, really appreciate it. And why not subscribe to my mailing list so you can get these podcasts right into your inbox? You can do that at gmarkphillips.com. and you can download Renew Morning Ritual, which I've actually added a couple of different downloads in that bundle. That'll set you up on my mailing list, and you'll then start to get those in your inbox. You'll be notified about these podcasts. And look, I'm not going to send you a bunch of stuff that I don't think will be beneficial or valuable to you. I'm only going to notify you when I think something will help you have better experiences, because I'm not into sending a bunch of spam and I'm trying to get you involved in a bunch of stuff that I think is just frivolous. That's pointless for all of us. So I'll only notify you about some stuff that I think is really valuable for you. But you can do that at gmarkphillips.com. And I think that's about it for this episode. Hey, I really appreciate you tuning in and hanging out with me on this episode. Like I said, I was super excited to record this one, talking about being is your superpower. You are a superhero already. You always have been. You always will be, because you can change your state of being, and because you can consciously choose and decide who you want to be. And it doesn't have to be the same as you were yesterday. Really, really powerful stuff. Hey, I hope you got a lot out of this episode. I really enjoyed sharing this information with you. And until next, all the best, health, wealth, and success. Bye-bye.